Writing is one of those skills that I think pretty much anyone stands to gain a lot from getting better at. But since it's something we learn at a pretty young age and something that everyone just kind of knows how to do, it's very easy to overlook it as a skill to improve. If you're new here, my name is Jarle, and on Early Owl, we learn how to communicate better. Even if your job has nothing to do with writing, there is a pretty good chance that you're dealing with some form of written communication, be that through email or messaging or whatever else. And the same is true if you're a student. You might not have an actual writing course, but you probably have to communicate with other students or professors or maybe student organizations. And even completely outside of the world of work and studies, maybe you have some complaint to a company because you bought something and it didn't work, or maybe you have some civil dispute with a landlord, or maybe you just want to ask a question or get some help online. No matter who you are or what you're doing, odds are every now and again you'll be in a situation where you need to write something to accomplish a specific goal. And putting a little bit of effort into becoming better at writing can go a long way when it comes to accomplishing that. Getting better at writing is just going to leave people with a better impression of you generally and will help open new doors. If we're talking about writing as like a creative pursuit, I definitely don't think I'm a very good writer. But when it comes to the type of online writing and communication I'm talking about, I think I can boil down the advice I have to just one specific thing. And that is to keep it concise. You want to make what you're saying short and just boil it down to the most important points you're trying to make. There's basically two cases where this is especially important, I think. The first is if you're trying to persuade someone of something, and the other is if you're trying to ask for something. If you're trying to make a point or persuade someone of something, then it's easy to feel like just the more and better arguments you can kind of put in your favor, and the more you kind of can explain what your thought process is, the better it is for your case. But I think in reality, the opposite is often true. I linked to this post in the description. It's by Scott Adams and it's called The Day I Became a Better Writer. But I'll quote some of it here. A good argument in 5 sentences will sway more people than a brilliant argument in 100 sentences. This can be hard to stick to, especially if you feel strongly about the point you're trying to make. Then you want to just kind of pile on things in your favor and make your case as bulletproof as possible. But in reality, I think you're almost always better served just focusing in on the most important points and making them as clear as possible. The same holds true if you're asking for something, that you can just make a more convincing case if you make it shorter. But a big point here is also just respecting the other person's time. This becomes especially true if there's some kind of different like power dynamic going on, either in terms of like their position towards you, like a professor and a student, or maybe they're kind of an expert and you're asking for their help. Or maybe there's someone who would get a lot of requests like this, like maybe you're reaching out to some author or content creator or someone who you look up to. In those cases, you want to be especially mindful of the other person's time and kind of make what you're asking very short and concise and clear, and also make it as easy as possible for them to respond to it. I will say that this is something I'm extremely bad at myself by default. The quote, "I would have written you a shorter letter if I had less time," rings very true for most of my life. So it is something I kind of very consciously learned to get better at, and it's not something I always employ. Like I respond to every YouTube comment, for example, and in those cases, I don't really, like I'm not asking for something and I don't care that much. I'm sorry, people that I respond to, but I don't care that much about kind of saving the other person time. I'm like happy enough just kind of jotting down my thoughts to whatever the response is and then just sending that away. And in those cases, I think it's fine because I'm not looking for something specific out of that comment. I just want to share my thoughts with them. But if I'm writing something where I have some more specific goal in mind, like maybe I'm dealing with some difficult situation through email, or I'm writing some post that I'm going to make online and I want people to read it, then I put a lot more effort into writing and making it concise. Like generally how the writing process would go for me is I spend like half the time just kind of writing out what I'm trying to say. And then I spend just as much time just going through it and cutting it down and making it shorter and kind of boiling it down to the most important points I'm trying to make. I do think the same is true for YouTube videos to a certain extent, that you're better off making them shorter so you can kind of deliver a more clear and concise point. But it's not as clear cut because you don't want to cut out like everything that gives it personality or everything that kind of gives a little piece of you. But it's still something I'm trying to get better at, like making my videos shorter and more concise. So in the essence of that and of this video, I'll cut this short here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday.